Tonight, TikTok on trial. The Supreme Court hears a case that could determine the future of the app in America. Plus says deadly wildfires continue to rage across areas of Los Angeles.
As you can see, there's nothing left.
Those already affected begin to pick up the pieces. How faith is carrying some through. And
this is not about immigration reform.
Why leaders in Chicago are pushing back on President-elect Trump's immigration plans. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The Supreme Court set to weigh in on whether TikTok stays or goes. Good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. TikTok's future is in the U.S. is now rests in the hands of the Supreme Court. In what's being called one of the most important cases of the social media age, justices heard arguments in this case that pits national security against free speech. Senior Washington correspondent Tara Merchner has the latest from the Supreme Court. Tara?
Jenna, the justices will decide if TikTok's Chinese ownership poses a credible threat to national security or if the government's actions go too far.
The case centers on a recent law requiring ByteDance, TikTok's Chinese parent company, to divest its U.S. operations by January 19th or face a nationwide ban. Justice Brett Kavanaugh asked what would happen if the law isn't blocked.
At least as I understand it, we go dark. Essentially, the platform shuts down.
The Biden administration supports the law and argues it's needed to prevent China from accessing American users' data or manipulating content. TikTok claims it's a violation of the First Amendment. President-elect Donald Trump has requested a delay in enforcing the law until after his inauguration. Chief Justice John Roberts said his main concern is that the parent company is required to cooperate with the Chinese government.
The ultimate company that controls it, ByteDance, was found by Congress, and I quote this, to be subject to Chinese laws that require it to assist or cooperate with the Chinese government's intelligence work.
As to their First Amendment argument, TikTok and its supporters claim the platform is a vital tool for expression and commerce, with 170 million U.S. users. Justice Amy Coney Barrett raised concerns about TikTok's examples of free speech, pointing out that the concern lies in the potential for covert content manipulation.
A lot of your examples talk about, including the Bezos one, the right of an American citizen to repeat what a foreign entity says or say, you know, I'm hitching my wagon to China, I want to say everything China does. Here, the concern is about the covert content manipulation piece of the algorithm. That is something that ByteDance wants to speak, right?
Justice Sonia Sotomayor asked about the data collected by TikTok.
From what I understand from the briefs, not only is it getting your information, it's asking, and most people give it permission, to access your contact list, whether that contact list has permitted them to or not. So they can now have data about all of your contacts and anything you say about them.
As roughly half of Americans use TikTok for entertainment and information, the outcome of this case could have far-reaching implications for how the U.S. handles foreign-owned technology platforms and national security.
And the justices now face a tight deadline with a ruling expected before January 19th. For now, TikTok's fate, Jenna, remains uncertain.
All right, Tara Merchner at the Supreme Court. Thank you, Tara. And here with us now is Dr. Casey Myers, Director of Graduate Studies at the School of Communication at Virginia Tech. Casey, welcome. So what did you make of today's oral arguments, and did you get any kind of sense of how the justices might rule here?
Well, as anyone's guess how the justices will rule, and one of the court cases is that you really have to wait and see the final result. There's a lot of prognostication that you can do about how they will rule based on questions. But if just based on the questions alone and some of their subtext of what they were saying, it seems that they are very likely to uphold the law. Again, they were seemed in the questions to be very swayed by some of the national security arguments being made by the Biden administration. They also seem to be concerned around the national security issues around data as it relates to TikTok and their ability to turn data over to the Chinese government.
Yeah. You mentioned national security pitted against freedom of speech, really, in this case, those two issues on the line. Can you talk a little bit more about that, Casey?
Well, one of the things that the case is about is this forced divestiture based upon the fact that the government that TikTok owner resides in is China. And then under Chinese law, the thought is that this could be used as a mechanism to give data from the users of TikTok, and it's estimated around 170 million Americans are on the platform, to the government, and that could be used for all sorts of nefarious purposes. And so there's a national security dimension to the ban, and in fact, that's why it received bipartisan support in Congress. Now, on the other side is the First Amendment, and we've not had a case quite like this around ownership issues and content control as it relates to social media platforms, and not quite the same way. However, there is some precedent for there to be regulations around non-U.S. company ownership of resources and industries that are potentially very impactful. So the idea that that you could regulate an industry based on what country owns it, or what country's what country's parent company owns it, is got some precedent in other industries, and so it's unique in this regard to the First Amendment and unique to social media.
Yeah, President-elect Trump is among the people who want to TikTok to stay in the United States. If though the Supreme Court does strike it down, is there anything he can do after he officially takes office January 20th?
That's a great question, and one of which was brought up, I think, in an amicus brief filed by President Trump, who had asked the Supreme Court to kind of delay their decision. Of course, there would be kind of this implementation phase of the divestiture, and that has been January 19th is the deadline. That's another thing that kind of came up in the oral argument is, would January 19th be a kind of a day that they have to sell by, or could the process begin? Could they get an extension on that date, given the fact that this is an expensive company should ByteDance, who owns TikTok, decide that they're going to sell? But again, that is sort of speculative at this point, what Trump could do. There could be an implementation side of this that remains to be seen post-inauguration.
Yeah, we will wait and see. It's only 10 days away now. Dr. Casey Myers with Virginia Tech, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Well, in other news, more devastation out west as wildfires continue to ravage the Los Angeles area. While a temporary slowdown in Santa Ana winds is helping fire crews, new rounds of flames keep popping up, hindering progress. 4 major fires are still raging. At least 10 people have been killed and 10,000 buildings burned. Fire crews from all around the region are pitching in, hoping to take advantage while the winds have died down a bit.
Firefighters continue to move into the Southern California region from across the western region of the United States, and we are very, very grateful for any assistance that we are receiving. Weather conditions are beginning to turn favorably, which will allow us to increase our containment lines. Again, our primary focus remains on impacting and affecting rescues and saving lives while protecting property.
And the Santa Ana winds are expected to pick back up again on Sunday. Well, the devastation is unfathomable. Many are not giving up hope. Wendy Griffith has more on that.
Residents describe the devastation as apocalyptic. The fire in Pacific Palisades, now the most destructive in Los Angeles history, leveling entire blocks and reducing buildings to rubble.
Right now, thank the Lord, I am safe and I still have power.
TV host Kim Douglas lives just a few minutes from the Palisades.
So I go there every day and I, get my coffee in the morning and I do my errands, I do my grocery shopping there, and it literally is like Armageddon. So the City of Angels has turned into a war zone and everything is flattened. So many friends have lost everything. And the saddest part is they didn't even have a moment to grab, their mementos, their memories, their children's books and files or passports, nothing.
Many are outraged that their city wasn't more prepared, blaming Governor Gavin Newsom for the lack of water, including no pressure in some fire hydrants.
Yeah, I think everybody's shocked by it.
As for the lack of water,
we could have opened a lot more fire hydrants and had good pressure before we lost pressure. The water mains that go up into those hills and the pumps that lift the water into those hills should be bigger. And what we've seen over the last several decades is a trend towards sending less water south into the Southern California cities and encouraging those cities, and in many cases mandating through legislation that those cities just get by with less water.
Worship leader Joel Mott's home in Pasadena is still standing, although his friends in Altadena weren't so fortunate.
Really dear friends of mine that live in those neighborhoods there that have lost their homes and lost everything.
Joel, you have a ministry called California Will Be Saved. How can God use such a horrific tragedy as these wildfires to save people?
I think the message right now is like everything is temporary. Everything can be taken away in an instant. And so where do we stand with the Lord, and encouraging people to come to the Lord, come to Jesus. He's going to be our hope in the time of need. He's our salvation and refuge. So I think that's my message to everyone, the church and the lost. Like, let's have an evaluation of life in general right now. And in this time of need, like, put our faith in something eternal.
As Californians continue to deal with the worst wildfires in their state's history, Christians there are holding on to their faith while urging others to not lose hope.
We serve a God who calms the seas, and he can direct the winds, and he can give us hope even when it seems like there's no hope to be had. So I just want to be somebody that people can call and we can say, okay, this is what's happening, but we also have this. We know this. And this is when the Lord shines brightest and tends to just blow us all away with his glory and his grace. And I believe he's going to do that for the City of Angels.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
From legal trouble to transition latest, all things President-elect Trump next on Faith Nation. 10 days before he's sworn in for a second term, President-elect Trump was sentenced today in the New York criminal hush money case. As he said he would, Judge Juan Merchan gave the president-elect what's known as unconditional discharge, meaning no prison, no probation, or fines. Appearing by video from Mar-a-Lago, Trump addressed the court, maintaining no crime was ever committed.
I got indicted over calling a legal expense a legal expense. It was called a legal expense. I just want to say I think it's an embarrassment to New York, and New York has a lot of problems, but this is a great embarrassment. I believe that this and other cases that were brought, as you know, the DOJ is very much involved in this case.
And Trump says this whole case was an example of the weaponization of the government against him. All right, Nathan Gonzalez joins us now. He is the editor and publisher of Inside Elections and a Faith Nation contributor. Nathan, welcome. So the Trump team had been fighting to avoid today's sentencing so that Trump would not be labeled convicted felon. At the end of the day, though, do these proceedings, do they change anything for the president-elect?
Not really. I think most people have already made up their mind of what they think about the trial, whether they think Trump is guilty or not, whether they think it was fair or should have happened at all. If he had gone to jail, then that would be big news. But I doubt we're going to be talking about this, 2 or 3 days from now. It's just an end to, what became a very partisan event.
Yeah. One thing we will be talking a lot about in the weeks to come are the confirmation hearings up on Capitol Hill. They start next week. Pete Hegseth, Trump's defense nominee, testifies Tuesday, Nathan. What do you expect there? And do you think Hegseth will be confirmed after all of the allegations that came out against him?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see what kind of tactic or approach he could come in and sort of be conciliatory and talk about some of the concerns that some senators have with him and his confirmation. Or I expect it to be more in the vein of Trump, be defiant, be assertive, and the whole Trump team to say Trump won, he should get all of his people. But I think we have to remember that it's not just there are allegations, sexual misconduct allegations, alcohol abuse allegations, but there are also financial management questions for the two charities that he previously represented. And that's what some Democratic senators are focusing on, that he's potentially going to be in charge of a large number of employees, $1 trillion budget, and you have these financial mismanagement questions. And so I think it's going to be, it could be a rocky road for him.
What other confirmation hearings are you going to be keeping an eye on? Any that really stick out to you, Nathan?
Well, I think Trump needs a couple of wins, and so if he can get Senator Marco Rubio and Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, get those done and tack on those wins, that would probably be good for Trump. But the big ones to watch beyond Hegseth are RFK Jr. Because of questions people have about him, Tulsi Gabbard. These are going to be some of maybe the more provocative ones that are going to be worth watching.
Yeah, and it could be a test of how powerful, how much sway the incoming president has over Congress. Trump, he returned to Capitol Hill this week to hold meetings with GOP senators. Do you think, Nathan, Republicans have a clear vision and are aligned on how to move forward with Trump's policy agenda?
One of the challenges is that I'm not sure Trump has a clear, detailed, and specific agenda. Trump usually speaks in big themes, but when we're talking about Capitol Hill, you have to get into the details, and that's where it's interesting to hear Trump talk about whether it's one bill or two bills. I don't think he cares. He wants there to be things to get done, to say it was a deal, to say he helped broker the biggest and best deal ever, and that's what he cares about. But it's up to Congress. Are going to have to work out these details because ultimately things have to get passed. And so it would help for Republicans to get clarity from Trump on specifically what he wants, because they're afraid of going against what he wants to do.
All right, Nathan, always good to see you. Have a great weekend, Nathan.
Thank you.
And coming up, the president-elect is promising an immigration crackdown on day one. Leaders in Chicago, though, warn it won't go over well there. We explain. Welcome back. President-elect Trump has made clear mass deportations of some illegal immigrants will begin on day one of his administration. But those plans face strong opposition by several state and local leaders across the country, especially in Chicago, where the first deportations could actually take place. CBN's Paul Petit reports from the Windy City.
Administration border czar Tom Homan's announcement that deportation efforts would start in Chicago ignited a firestorm with Mayor Brandon Johnson.
This is not about immigration reform. This is about an administration who's determined to stoke fear into the people of this country.
Johnson and Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker have vowed Chicago will remain a sanctuary city and not cooperate with ICE agents. At a Christmas party in the Windy City, Homan threatened to arrest the mayor if he stood in his way.
If he knowingly harbors and conceals an illegal alien, I will prosecute.
More than 50,000 immigrants have arrived here in Chicago since August of 2022, and the city has paid upwards of $600 million to care for them. All that has created a bitter standoff here at City Hall between Mayor Johnson and angry citizens.
Now, you want to sit here, you and J.B. Pritzker want to puff out your chest and fight Tom Homan. We need Tom Homan here in Chicago. We need Donald Trump.
Chicago Alderman Nick Sposato sits in those City Hall meetings.
Listen, they got a legitimate beef. They're saying you're not worried about us, but you're worried about these people that are here illegally.
Sposato and Alderman Raymond Lopez say they're baffled by their mayor's stance.
Well, I think his position, quite frankly, is foolish and not fully thought out.
I don't know why he picked Chicago, but he did. Mainly because of Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson, for what they're saying, that they don't want to work with you. So he's going to make an example of us and say, we're not going to take that, and we're going to go grab these people and get them out of here.
Lopez is a Democrat with a large Hispanic constituency. After meeting Trump's border czar, he quickly became labeled a sellout by many fellow Democrats. He says once you explain to Chicagoans this is deporting illegal criminals, most get on board.
We can help navigate this ship if we work with the Trump 2.0 administration. The question is, will Democrats meet President Trump halfway to accomplish those goals?
To help those efforts, Lopez authored a city ordinance which will amend Chicago's Welcoming City Municipal Code. He hopes for a vote during next week's first city council meeting of 2025.
It allows Chicago's law enforcement to work with our federal partners if we arrest or have someone who is convicted of crimes associated with gangs, drugs, prostitution, human trafficking, as well as sex crimes involving minors. I think that's 4 very simple categories of criminality that I think we can all agree we don't want in our city.
All eyes will be on this city to see what happens after the January 20th inauguration. Homan says he plans to be in Chicago on day 1 to carry out his plan.
For the millions of illegal aliens who have been released in this country in violation of federal law, you're going home, and Tom Homan's going to make sure that happens.
In Chicago, Paul Petit, CBN News.
And outside of Illinois, Tom Homan is also battling several governors in California, Arizona, and New York opposed to his plan, but also open to discussing removing illegal violent criminals. On the jobs front, the U.S. economy ended the year on a good note. A new report today from the Labor Department shows 256,000 positions were added to the job market in December. That's the most monthly job gain since March of 2023, and well above the 155,000 economists had predicted. The unemployment rate also slightly improved, ending the year at 4.1% compared to 4.2% in November. Still ahead, pandemonium at the National Zoo. Exciting news for fans of the bamboo-loving bear. Finally tonight, the countdown is on here in D.C. for the Smithsonian National Zoo's giant panda debut. The 3-year-old giant pandas, Bo Lee and Ching Bo, are warming up to their new home despite the snow and cold here in the nation's capital right now. And they are already showing off their personalities by rolling, sliding, and playing in the snow this week. Zookeepers say the pair is active and ready for the crowds. To celebrate their debut, the zoo is hosting special events, including a Lunar New Year celebration and District Panda Party. Their official reveal is scheduled for Friday, January 24th. And that's going to do it for Faith Nation tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you Monday.